If you wake up on the 1st of May in a rural Bavarian village, you'll likely find your neighbors dressed in traditional leather breeches, drinking strong Maibach beer, and working together to hoist a massive wooden pole into the sky. But if you wake up that exact same morning in the Kreuzberg district of Berlin, you'll step outside to find the streets shut down. Instead of folk music, the air is thick with the chants of masked demonstrators holding banners, marching through the city in intense labor protests. This is the dual reality of May Day in Germany, a single public holiday known as Maifest, or Der 1. Mai, that suffers from a severe split personality. So how did one specific square on the calendar become both an idyllic spring folk festival and an aggressive battleground for the international working class? To untangle these two identities, we have to back up a few hours. The holiday actually begins in the dark, on the eve of April 30th, a date historically feared as Walpurgis Night, or Witches' Night. According to local folklore, this was the one night of the year when witches would fly across the country to gather on the foggy, imposing peak of the Brocken mountain. To protect themselves, medieval villagers built roaring bonfires to scare those evil spirits away from their homes and crops. Today, that superstitious fear has morphed into a nationwide party called Tanz in den Mai, dancing into May. Youth crowds pack into streets and clubs, spending the night drinking and pulling elaborate neighborhood pranks. It acts as a chaotic, fiery purge. People exhaust the last remnants of the long, dark winter so they can wake up to the structured, welcoming light of spring. When the sun rises on May 1st, rural communities turn their attention to the centerpiece of the season, the Maibaum, or maypole. Looking at this image of a traditional maypole, you can see distinct shields jutting off the sides of the painted wood. These symbols are visual evidence of the different medieval trades in the village: bakers, carpenters, and butchers. It stands as an ancient axis connecting heaven and earth, grounded in the pride of local labor. Because the pole is a massive point of local pride, it inspires the day's most intense tradition: maypole stealing. In the dead of night, young men from neighboring towns will sneak through the woods, plotting to kidnap the heavy tree before it can be erected. There are strict rules to this heist. If the thieves manage to drag the multi-ton log away without getting caught, the victims have to buy it back. The ransom requires a massive feast and copious amounts of free beer served directly to the people who robbed them. This sanctioned theft forces neighboring villages to sit down at the same table, drink together, and reaffirm their bonds. While the countryside navigates ransom negotiations, the major cities focus on an entirely different kind of labor. For urban residents, May 1st is Tag der Arbeit, Labor Day. Taking a look at this historical photograph of Chicago's Haymarket Square, we can see the sheer volume of the crowds involved in the 1886 labor strikes. This violent escalation over an 8-hour workday sparked a global movement, cementing May 1st as International Workers' Day. In Germany, the date carries a dark political history. In 1933, the Nazi regime co-opted the May 1st movement, declaring it a national holiday and using the massive crowds of organized labor to project their own authoritarian power. Following the Second World War, modern German workers aggressively reclaimed the day. They stripped away the state-sponsored propaganda and returned to the streets to demand fair wages, shorter hours, and safer conditions. In the industrial era, the ancient concept of welcoming the spring harvest was permanently rewritten. It became an annual, physical fight for the dignity and survival of the working class. On the surface, hoisting a painted birch tree in a quiet meadow seems to have absolutely zero overlap with shutting down a major city street for a union march. But both of these traditions were forged in the crucible of the German winter, a historical period defined by freezing temperatures, intense isolation, and individual hardship. Whether you are a rural farmer or an urban factory worker, the mechanics of survival are identical. It takes dozens of coordinated hands to lift a multi-ton tree into the sky, exactly the same way it takes a unified, organized workforce to demand better conditions from an employer. Sharing Maibach beer with neighbors and linking arms in protest both require people to stop operating as isolated individuals and lock together into a single, impenetrable front.
Ultimately, Maifest is an acknowledgement that the seasons will always change and hardships will always return. But human beings only survive those dark months through absolute, unbreakable solidarity.